So, I wrote a book. I wrote it over the course of a year, and after getting rejected or ignored by some publishing agents, I decided to release it myself on Amazon. And I have found it perhaps one of the most emotionally tiring things I have ever done. Okay, let's back up for a moment. I am very aware that saying, oh, the book that I released that I had the free time and ability to write was so emotionally difficult, is showing myself to be in an incredibly privileged position. I am aware, and I'm trying the best to be as grateful as I can for the life I found myself in. One of the reasons I found writing and releasing my book, and funny enough, one of the reasons I wrote it in the first place, is because I am dyslexic. It's not something I've struggled with terribly during my life, to be honest. When in school during my later years, I can remember at least once passing a dyslexia assessment, if that's how you would describe it, meaning I didn't really need any of the help the school would offer. And even now in my professional life, I've managed to find ways around any difficulties I found due to it. When I decided I wanted to write a book, well, after I decided to write a book, sat on it for 4 years and then finally started after my wife told me I had to because she was tired of me talking about it and just wanted to read it already. My dyslexia was one of the things I was worried might actually hold me back. I would dread having to read back over chapters to correct them and bugged said wife repeatedly to ask if the grammar I'd used was correct. And once I'd actually released the damn thing, I would occasionally just have to flip to a random page and read a paragraph just to make sure what I'd written was actually comprehensible. I found the process of writing one that I really actually enjoyed once I got into a good flow. I started by just writing down different story beats that I wanted to get to in the narrative, which I found quite easy since, as I said previously, I'd been mulling over the ideas for this book for quite a while. I had then planned to write out a summary of the whole plot, but found I was really struggling once I'd gotten about 50% of the way through to fill in gaps. So I just started. I found writing chapters 1 and 2 really rough. I spent most of the time severely overthinking everything I was writing, and given the fact that both of them were made up mostly of POV characters in monologues, it meant I had a lot to decide of how I was actually going to style my writing. How was I going to show my writing when a character was thinking? Was I going to write "they thought" after every line? Was I going to write "they said" after every time a character spoke? This resulted in me grabbing just random books off my bookshelf and checking to see how the authors I admired went about it, and came to the conclusion that everyone seemed to do it slightly different, which really didn't help much. I eventually settled on a few writing rules that I set for myself, and decided as long as I kept consistent to it, it should be fine. Hopefully. I carried on forcing my way through the writing till I got about 4 or 5 chapters in, when I realised what I'd already written tended to meander about. And so I decided to start writing short summaries for a chapter before I wrote it as a whole. This is really when I found my flow. In a week I would write a chapter using the summary I'd written previously, and then write the summary for the next. As I wrote, I found it easier and easier to find the voices of my characters, and once I grew a bit more confident, it was incredibly cathartic to sit down and create the story I'd had floating around in my head for all these years. I continued this process till I got about 75% through the book, and realised I was going to need to get the whole rest of the story planned out if I was starting to wrap it up. I did a summary of the rest of the story and then plotted out each of the remaining chapters. Once I'd gotten it all down, I probably got the last 8 chapters finished in just under a month, a lot faster than I'd been writing previously. Now I'd gotten it finished, I just had to go over it and create a more polished draft. And this is where I found I was having issues. As I was reading back over chapters, I would beat myself up over every spelling or grammatical error. I even, on a few occasions, considered scrapping the whole thing. This led to probably one of the biggest blunders I made. The draft that I produced and sent to publishing agents was one I had rushed to create, since I found the process of critiquing my own works so painful. Looking back now, I'm embarrassed by the samples I sent out, and doing that properly is probably the only thing I would change in this whole process. Luckily, after a few weeks where I took a break, I went back and actually gave the book the work it needed. Realising I was probably not going to get an agent, I decided I was going to self-publish. Amazon makes this process surprisingly easy. All I needed to do was produce an ebook version, which I was able to do with not too much difficulty, and produce a cover. Luckily, my wife's a pretty good artist, and after a few versions, she managed to reproduce the kind of idea I had in my head of a symbol I had described in the book, that being the symbol for the school some of the characters attend, and from that I was able to develop my final cover, which I have to say I'm actually quite happy with. Now it was time to actually release it, and frankly I was excited. But then once I actually saw it was available, I found the nerves were starting to get to me. I was convinced that everyone would find the plot of the book silly or nonsensical. Luckily, after a few people I somewhat know, i.e. people I don't think would lie to me, read it and told me they actually liked it, I started to feel a lot more confident. I think the main thing I've taken away from this experience is putting your art out into the world. God, calling it my art feels cringe. Is exposing in a way that can be very scary. But I am very proud of myself that I did it. I am planning on writing more. I've already plotted out about half the sequels to Children of the Moon, as well as an at the moment standalone high fantasy novel. But yeah, I just thought I might start showing that with a bit more of a personal vid. Going to hopefully be posting more frequently here, just talking about random stuff, as well as maybe reading some extracts from my work. I've put the link to my book in the description if anyone wants to check it out. The first 3 chapters are available to read on Amazon, and yeah, thanks for watching. If you want to see more stuff I'm going to do, give me a sub and drop a like and all that guff. It's free and it makes me smile. Anyway, catch you later.